Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. The topic of this podcast is going to be the largest battery energy storage systems in the world. And it's a little bit difficult to know what the largest energy storage system in the world is for a couple of different reasons. One is because whatever the largest is, it keeps changing. They keep adding to it. They keep growing. They keep adding more batteries to that system. Another thing is, how do you even rate the energy storage systems? Are we talking about power? That means the rate at which it can charge or discharge the batteries to the grid. Or are we talking about energy? How much energy it holds? We do call it energy storage. I like to talk about energy. However, a lot of times utilities and the newspaper articles will tell you how big an energy storage system is in its power, which oftentimes is called capacity. And then another reason why it's hard to tell what the biggest in the world is, let me give you an example. The biggest energy storage system in the world is at a place where the sixth largest energy storage system in the world is, which is a giant power plant that is a recycled natural gas power plant. So they stopped using the natural gas, but they're using the transmission and distribution and all that infrastructure there. It's a place called Moss Landing. It's a beautiful spot right along Monterey Bay. There's a couple of big chimneys there that are kind of famous. And so we have the same property has two different energy storage systems. Do we say it's one? It's made by two different companies, and oftentimes it is shown as being two different systems. Sometimes with solar, I see them call it a solar park. And a solar park might be where there's a place where there's multiple different solar farms in the same area. Maybe we can call this a battery park. The one thing that's kind of different between energy storage and solar, though, is solar, we have to gather energy for the sun, so it takes up space. It takes up a lot more acres than it does with energy storage, where we just have to have a smaller piece of land, and we can even stack them on top of each other. That is, lots of times there's one battery over another. You can't do that too well with solar modules. I mean, you can talk about multi-junction solar cells, but that's not really what we're talking about. We're not stacking our solar modules. So let me just kind of list off some of these projects here. And so first off, we have Vistra, the number one on the list. And this Vistra solar project, this stage that we're talking about, completed in 2021, but I know there's plans to make this system much bigger, is 400 megawatts, and that's pretty much the rating of the inverter, 400 megawatts. And then the amount of batteries, that is 1,600 megawatt hours. That's 1.6 gigawatt hours. And the types of batteries that we're seeing at this big, huge project are the LG Chem batteries. That's a South Korean battery company. The next biggest one that we're going to talk about here is in Blythe, California. So that's way out there in that desert somewhere between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, where not a whole lot lives. There's a lot of solar farms out that way. And we are looking at 350 megawatts. That's the inverter output. That's how much it could send to or take from the grid all at once. And then the amount of batteries that we're seeing there at that Crimson project are 1,400 megawatt hours. That's 1.4 gigawatt hours. Then number 3 on the list here, and by the way, I've mentioned it before, this list is just what I could gather, and there are going to be different lists with different ratings for who's number 1, 2, and 3. And this is what I'm going for here. Number 3, named after the manatee. That's right, it's the Manatee Project in Florida, of course, where the manatees lived. And that one was completed in 2021. And they're claiming that they're the largest energy storage project that's co-located with solar. So that means at the same place as solar. And that project is 409 megawatts. That's the power output. So that's actually more power output than the 400 megawatts that's in Moss Landing. So somebody that's making that project might claim they're the biggest because they have the biggest inverter power connected to the grid. But the storage of energy that we have there is 900 megawatt hours. That's 0.9 gigawatt hours, also LG batteries. Then number 4 on our list, where I am right now, is in Australia, but I'm not next to this battery. I'm in the same state though, New South Wales. It's called the Victorian Big Battery. There's a big statue of Queen Victoria right outside of my window. And this Victorian big battery in New South Wales is 300 megawatts of inverter power and 450 megawatt hours of batteries. And this particular battery is made by Tesla. And now we're coming up to number 5, also in Blythe, California, like the Crimson Storage project that was in Blythe, but this one is called McCoy Solar, finished in 2021, and that is 230 megawatts of inverters and 920 megawatt hours of batteries. So maybe those two projects in Blythe, we could see how close they are together to see if we could call them perhaps a battery park. That's just a word that I just made up a few minutes ago. And then the bottom of this list here, because I'm going up to number 6, is also in Moss Landing. It's on the same property. It is very close to that number 1 Vistra project, Moss Landing by Monterey Bay. And by the way, Monterey Bay, that's where John Denver crashed his airplane. Take me home, country roads. Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain. Oh, back to work. And what we have here is 182.5 megawatts of inverter, and that is 730 megawatt hours of batteries. And that was a Tesla battery. And so we have Tesla batteries and LG batteries sitting on the same property. And pretty much those are the two popular battery brands that we're seeing for these big projects. That would be LG, that South Korean company, and Tesla. And actually these two companies even work together. So I thought what I would do too is I would add together the Vistra, that's the largest number 1 project, and the Elkhorn, which is number 6. And for power, what happens if I add the 400 megawatts from the Vistra and the 182.5 megawatts for the Elkhorn, I'm going to come up with 582 megawatts, and that's on the same, not too big piece of property. And I say not too big, I always think of megawatts being like really huge for solar, and it just doesn't take up that much space for these energy storage systems. And then if we look at the batteries, how much batteries we have there, we're going to measure that in megawatt hours, and we have 1,600 megawatt hours for the Vistra, 730 megawatt hours for the Elkhorn, and we end up with a total of 2,330 megawatt hours. That's 2.33 gigawatt hours. And so if we total these up and just say it all in one breath, we have 582 megawatts of inverter, 2,333 megawatt hours of batteries. Now that is huge. And I'm not sure right off the bat, but I imagine this single project is more than the amount of batteries the whole world had probably not too long before this project was built, probably a couple of years, I'm guessing. That just, it goes to show you how fast this energy storage business is booming. One of these things that was in the news a couple of years ago while I was making some of my slides is this Tesla battery that was the biggest in the world, and now it doesn't even get on top of the list. Plus, they have been adding to it and making it bigger. And so that one was the one, you might have read about it. It was kind of made by a Twitter bet, 100 days or it's free, and it was this Elon Musk thing, and it was in a place called South Australia. They used it mostly for frequency control, and that one was 100 megawatts of inverter and 129 megawatt hours of batteries. And mostly in the news, you would just read about it being 100 megawatts. So they were telling you the power of the energy storage system. And that was such big news. And if we think about it, energy storage systems that we see today are so much bigger. I did do a calculation there though, and if we had 129 megawatt hours of batteries in that project, and I divided that by 85 kilowatt hours is how much energy storage I have in my car, that means it is 1,518 of my cars. And so I have the 85 kilowatt hour Tesla Model S, and that was built in 2015. So anyway, this project, when it was the biggest in the world, that was 100 megawatts connected to the grid, 129 megawatt hours of batteries, that was in 2017. And it was all over the news for the largest in the world. One of the trends that I have been seeing about these large energy storage systems is there seems to be a switch from using the lithium-ion batteries with cobalt in them, such as the NCA or the NMC, to using the lithium-ion batteries with iron in them. So that would be the lithium iron phosphate, or LFP batteries. They're getting more popular, especially for the stationary energy storage projects. And so one more thing about that Vistra project, that's the largest in the world, there are plans to make that 6,000 megawatt hours. Wow, 6,000 megawatt hours. That's 6 gigawatt hours. I did some calculations, and if we had 100 to 200 EVs to megawatt hour, that means it's about 600,000 to 1.2 million EVs worth of batteries. This energy storage industry is a great industry to get into. It is growing so fast. There's a huge need for it, especially with the intermittent renewables on the grid. We have solar, we have wind, we have all the electric vehicles plugging in at the same time. And we need to smooth all that stuff out and control the power factor, the frequency, the voltage of the grid, and make everything go smooth. Pretty exciting, pretty awesome to get into this industry. And I see a lot of people that are transitioning from the solar industry to the energy storage industry with solar. It's almost the same industry, but we just have to retool and learn more and more about energy storage. So to learn more about energy storage systems, go to Solar, SEAN, that's solarshawn.com, and check it out. Charge your brain, charge your future. Awesome to see an industry with such promise and such exponential growth.